It's your girl DJ Miss Eclectic, Wiki, and you're checking out the Mixtape podcast. I've got a special guest this evening, Miss Maddie Ray, all the way in Illinois. How are you doing this evening?
Doing good. Thank you, DJ Miss Eclectic, for having me on. It's such an honor.
Absolutely. We were just talking about the weather where she is. And I said, I'm complaining that it's 58, but it's in the 40s where she is. So I'm going to stop complaining and count my blessings.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We're chilly over here. So you guys got it a couple degrees nicer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not what the song say. I won't complain.
Amen.
So I'm excited to have you on the show. I mean, you are all of the above. You're an artist, you're an author, you're an evangelist. Like, you're amazing. I love how so bold you are for Christ. So I'm just excited about this interview. So first of all, give us a little background. Did you always know that you were going to be this bold, boisterous person for God?
Yeah, for me, I grew up in the church. My parents are pastors, and so they founded our church, Church of Joy, over 25 years ago. And so I've grown up in the way that our church started. Really, the heart that my father had and the call that God gave him was to reach a young generation. And so I grew up in a ministry outreach and evangelism and programming and bus ministry and all of those different things. And so in seeing that and seeing my dad's heart for this young generation, it really sparked something inside of me. And I think even as a pastor's kid, I always felt so involved. You know, I think sometimes pastors' kids can maybe feel like, oh, that's just my parents' ministry.
Right.
But I remember growing up and I felt like, I felt like this is our ministry. Like, no, we are called to reach a generation. So I always knew from a very young age that I was going to continue on with the heart and legacy of my parents of reaching young people, but definitely didn't know that it was, that my ministry would become what it is and that I would be doing all that I'm doing. But like I said, from a young age, I was doing a lot of fun stuff to reach children. At 12, I had a kids TV show called The Maddie Ray Show. And so I started doing that, teaching kids, doing little songs and all that. And then the fun one that everyone loves to hear is that when I was about 14 years old, I was in an all-girls Christian rap group.
Yes, come on now.
So I did that, and that was so much fun, rapping and dancing. And that's what really inspired me to do music and to be a recording artist, but also a performing artist. I love to perform and do Christian pop and hip hop and incorporate dance and show that element, and how we can present the gospel in that way. And so I did that. And then I became the youth pastor at my church at 18, started preaching more. And from there, all of these things kind of culminated together. And the things that we were doing here in a local way with our community, God began to use me to take that to a national level now and to do a lot of the things that we were doing for a young generation here, to take that to this young generation that's here in our nation and to bring the gospel to them. And so that's what I do now. But so much of it started when I was young. And a lot of it was faith because I didn't know it would be what it is today. Right. But I'm really grateful for where the Lord has brought me.
Absolutely. That's absolutely a blessing. You said all girls group. I rap, and I used to rap back in the day. I started when I was 10, and my little cousin, we used to rap and we used to think we were somebody back in the day. So I love it.
Wow, that's so awesome. How fun.
I love it. You're a PK. I'm not a PK, but I'm a church kid. So my mom is the minister of music at my home church back home. So I already know all too well.
Oh yes. We are in the church. We're all about it, doing ministry. So,
Absolutely. When I was reading through your book and I saw this is to the church kids, I said, "Yep, that's me. I'm in that community."
That's right. Somebody's got to acknowledge the church kids.
Right. I was like, "Yeah, give us the props a little, just a tad bit."
We've been putting in work in the church. Come on now.
Oh gosh, I love it. So what were some of your struggles? Because some people say, oh, you grew up in church and oh, you're a pastor's kid, or you don't have any real worries, or you don't have any real issues growing up. What's some of the issues that you did have growing up as that living in the church life? I know some people experience church hurt. There are different things that go on in church, but what are some of your experiences?
I talk a little bit about that in the book that I'm about, to release, about how as a pastor's kid, as a church kid, you see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mm-hmm. You're around it all, and you're a part of it all. You're in the back room meetings. You're sitting on the front row. I mean, you're watching it. And so I remember facing different challenges as most kids would. I faced, obviously the challenge of a pastor's kid, of this expectation, right, that everybody has of being the perfect kid, to do this,
Oh,
to do
yeah.
that, to, your dad's a pastor, you should be, doing these things, or, things in the church of, dealing with people and just all that comes with dealing with people. But I think
Absolutely.
in that, this is where a lot of my testimony comes from. I, like many young people, had to make a decision of whether or not I was going to go with God and go with the plan and purpose he had for my life and remain in the church, or if I was going to, as some young people, and I see this a lot today, and this is why I minister the way I minister, but then there's other young people where they do leave the church and they
Yes.
rebel, or they say, you know what, I don't want to meet that expectation, that's too high, so I'm going to just go over here and do that. And I was faced with that option. And I thank the Lord that through my parents, through my relationship with God, that in spite of those challenges that I would face, I chose to go with the Lord.
Amen.
I have a testimony where I did not rebel. I have a
Yeah.
testimony where I have not left the church. And that's where I talk, even in this book that I'm releasing, about how amazing that testimony is. Because sometimes that kind of a testimony gets overlooked of, well, you haven't been through this, or you haven't gone through that, or you don't know what it's like to be out there. And you know what? You're right. I don't know what it's like to be out there, but I do know what it's like to dwell in the house of the Lord, to live my life for God, to be passionate about the things of God, and to walk in my purpose. I do know what that's like. And for me, I want to take that testimony and share that with the generation so they can know that it's possible. It's possible to, yes, face challenges that you will face in your life, in your walk with Christ, in the church, but it's possible to overcome, to keep your heart pure, to have a clean perspective, and to remain in the place that God has planted you, and to fulfill the plan that's on your life. And so that's even a little bit of my testimony and story. I could get more in depth with that, but that's really even my heart. When I, speak to church kids or pastors' kids, just really, seeing that it is a choice of what life are we going to live. And the beautiful thing is there's a life that God has prepared for us to live.
Absolutely. You better preach the word on the click. You better preach the word on the show. And that's very refreshing to hear, because you're only 23. So that's very refreshing to hear from you. I love it, especially when we're at a time where a lot of millennials are leaving the church, even zennials in my age frame, where everybody's leaving the church, and they're like, I grew up in church, but that's not what I've been church heard. I've seen too many things. Like you said, my uncle always said, before you join a church, go there on a weekday. Don't always go on a Sunday, but go on a weekday and see what they do at the meetings and at choir rehearsals and their Bible study. So I definitely understand what you're saying. Yes. So
you gotta go to the choir rehearsal first. I haven't heard that one. I like that.
I was like, you got a point. That's a good point. But you talk a lot about this, and your book is Dwell, Empowering the Next Generation to Live the Life God Intended. And I absolutely love it, because you can tell that you are a living witness of the life God intended for you. What are your thoughts on millennials leaving the church? And I know you touch on it on your book.
Yeah, well, it's a problem that this generation is facing today. I mean, they're leaving the church. They don't want anything to do with God. They're getting caught up in the world systems, and we have a problem not only with this generation, but with society, with culture, with social media, and what it's presenting this young generation. Because it's not like the young people are just leaving the church because there's nothing good in the church.
There you go.
Young people are leaving the church because of all of these things that are out here that are pulling on them. It's deceiving them and seducing them that over here, that this is better over here. And really, we bring up the term church hurt, which I've heard and I know and I understand, but we got to understand that there are things in the world that will hurt us far more than anything we could ever experience in the church. Because I believe this with all my heart, that the church is the most perfect, imperfect place that we could ever be. Yes, it becomes imperfect when we walk through the door, because we are in the most perfect place, because it's the only place that God has established, God has built. It is his house. It does not belong to us. And that's why I believe that today God is calling a generation back to the church. He's calling a generation to dwell once again, a generation that's going to separate themselves from the things of the world. And how do we do that? we do that by understanding the truth of God's word. We understand
Absolutely.
what is true. The biggest thing that pulls young people out of the church is their misunderstanding of what truth is. We have this thing in our culture of, your truth can be your truth and my truth can be my truth. But as believers, we believe that there's one truth, and his name is Jesus. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father except through me. And so young people, they have to know the truth again. That's why they need the gospel. And I believe that when they're preached and told the true gospel and what their life can look like, I believe it will draw the hearts of a generation back into the church, into God's plan, into his purpose, and into his will. So that way, as I say in this book, Dwell, they can live the life that God intended for them to live.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more than 100% of what you said. That is so true. And who do you think this book is intended for? Is it just intended for millennials, just intended for church kids? Can older people read it? Can kids read it? Who is the targeted demographic for this book?
Yeah. Well, I think the way that I wrote it, even the way that it's written, it can be read from the youngest to the oldest person. And I think anyone that reads it can get something out of it. I will say in this book, and I've written other books as well that encourage, people in other areas of their life. But the heart of this book, Dwell, it really is for that church kid, that pastor's kid, that young person that's wanting to live their life for God. That's the heart. Now, everybody can get something out of it, but my heart in it is just showing them like, hey, this is how you can live, because it has my story. It has my testimony. I walk them through things that I have faced and ways that I've had to overcome temptations. But then there's also practical things, because I think we can, as young people get told, hey, you need to live the life that God has created you to live. But then the question comes up, how do I do that? How do I walk that out every day in the world that we're living in? Yeah. And so that's what's in the book. That's why I say, although a lot of my story is going to relate to church kids and pastors' kids, when you get to about the second half of the book, that's when you're going to see, oh, this is applicable for anyone trying to live their life for God. How do I walk this out day by day? And what are the things that I do? And lastly, for this book, and I have it right here with me. I'm so excited for it to come out. But we did this as a revised and an extended edition. And so the last chapter in this book, when I was thinking about, revising the cover and making some changes, I thought, Lord, what do you add to this book that's going to add value to the person reading it? And the last chapter is all about a recent encounter that I had in my late teens, early 20s with the Lord that completely was just a turning point for my life, where God became so real to me, more real than anything else in my life. And he became so real where now my entire life is consumed by God. Everything that I do is for him. Everything that I say is for him. I've solely committed and consecrated myself unto the Lord. And so that last chapter is that last and final kind of a push there, if you will, and kind of nudge of, hey, don't just, live out the traditional kind of Christian life, but let's choose to be consumed by God, where we have a fire that never burns out and we're consecrated unto the Lord, living out all that he has planned for us.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think that is so needed for what we see, the imagery that we see on TV and that's portrayed and that we always see pretty much is like shoved down our throat that we see on social media everywhere. I think this is a breath of fresh air, what you are doing. And so I think it's totally needed. I'm going to encourage anybody and everybody to get to this book, especially all the youth ministries. I'm definitely going to tell my youth ministry back home, they need to get this for the kids, because I think it's something that they can relate to. And you said something really important. Adults always tell us what to do, but don't tell us how to do it. And I think it's the transparency, right? They say it's the transparency for me, what you do in the book. So I like that you tell me not just walk it. How do you walk it? And how do you talk it? And how are you bold when everybody else is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know Jesus. So how are you bold in what you know in your heart and who you know God to be? So yes, I absolutely love that. And not only are you an author, as we said earlier, you're also an artist. So this also transcends to your music as well. So your current single is Deserve Your Love, which I heard and I was like, oh, I like this. I'm bopping my head and bumping.
Thank you.
I love it. So it's the same inspiration behind your book, same inspiration behind your music as well.
Absolutely. Again, you'll hear me say this phrase a lot, that a big part of what I minister on is just living the life God created you to live. I'm so passionate about that. And so in my music, it's translated through all of that. This new single, Deserve Your Love, it's such a precious song, very different from what I've done before. I usually do, like I said, more pop, at times a little bit of hip hop flair, but this one it's a lot slower. It's more contemporary. It's so heartfelt. And it really just really shares the love of God, the love that God has for us in moments of our life when we feel so undeserving, when we feel like we're not worthy of his love. I love the first part of it when it says, even in the midnight when the whole house is quiet, there's still the noise from all the stress that reigned throughout the day. I mean, all of us have those times when it's like, man, this has just been a hard day. This is just not easy. Like, God, have you even like seen what's going on? Are you here? And he is here, and he does love us, and he extends his hand to us when we need him. And so that's what that song is all about. And we did a beautiful music video to it that was shot just so nicely, and really just captures the heart and the purity of this song. And so that one just released. That's my most recent one. But throughout this whole year, I've been releasing different singles. And again, it all talks about, how to live your life for Christ. A song called No More Lies about, identity and purpose and not listening to the lies of the enemy. Or a song like No Bad Days, where it's, life is good because God is good, changing our perspective of how we walk out every day. And so all of my music has a message that's to help you as a believer. I do make music for the Christian to empower you to live your life for God and know that the Lord is with you.
I love it. I love it. I love it because your music is different as well. It's like it's made for the Christian, but I feel like somebody who is outside those four walls, they can actually listen to it too and actually understand what you're saying because it's so plain. So I love it. I love it. I think sometimes as Christians, we can get a little bit too complicated. It's like, well, let's let somebody else, an ear that's not in God and an ear that's not in Christ, let them listen to it too. Let them interpret it as well. Yeah. So I love that about your music. Absolutely love it. So tell everybody, so before we end this interview, who are some of your influences in music or in ministry in general?
I get asked this question all the time, and I never answer it very well for interviewers. I never give all the things they want. The biggest inspiration to me has been my father. He really has. And I could, there's people I listen to, I could name artists. There's people I, listen to their sermons that are preachers, I could list them. There's books that I read, I could list that. But the only person that has truly made the biggest impact in my life is my father. I would not be doing this if it wasn't for him. He's the one who has given me identity and purpose from the very beginning. This book that I wrote, Dwell, came through what he told me when I was a child. And I went to my dad and said, Dad, I don't know what my testimony is going to be. I don't know what I'll ever be able to share with anybody. And my father looked at me and he said, Maddie, you have one of the greatest testimonies because God intends for us to come to know him and never walk away from him. And he shared with me the verse, Psalms 27, verse 4, where it says, one thing I desire, this only do I seek, is to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and seek him in his temple. And it was at that moment that I made the commitment to live my life in that way, to dwell, to give my life completely to the Lord. And that's where this book came from. And every step of my journey, everything that I've done, my father has been a part of that. He has encouraged me. He has given me confidence. He has told me, Maddie, you were born to do this. And I've believed him every step of the way. And I am here doing what I'm doing because of him, because of my parents, him and my mom. And they have been the biggest influences within my life.
I love it. That's beautiful. That is a beautiful testimony. I love it. I love it. Family first, especially when somebody, I love, because a lot of people say, oh, this artist or this person, but I love you went straight back to your family, to your father. So I absolutely love it. Your greatest inspiration. And one more question I got to ask you. So for a young kid, because you're cool, you got your fashion going, you're beautiful, you've got everything going for you. You're the cool Christian, right? So what do you say to a young lady who all she does see is pretty much sex? You see the sex images on TV is what we see, what's portrayed, and everything of how, what size to be, how to look, what we portray. What's some advice you would give them to be bold in who you are? And it's okay Christians are cool too. It's okay to be a bold, cool Christian as well.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I love that. I'm so passionate too about purity and modesty and things like that. I'm trying to bring it back. Like, come on, like
Yeah,
this is
I'm
a
with it. I'm
good
with
thing.
it.
Purity and modesty. Yes, it's such a good thing. It's such
It is.
what God's intention is. And so, I would say to a young lady that might be facing that, is who does God say that you are? I mean, there's so many voices that we can listen to, but as believers, as Christians, if you believe in the God that you say you believe,
Yes.
listen to his voice, listen to his word. He has called you by name. He created you. He knows exactly the way that you are. If you're going to have confidence in anything, I mean, that's a big thing of like, right, I just want to be confident. I want to be confident in my skin and who I am and all of this. I don't have what the world calls a self-confidence, because self-confidence is where your confidence is dependent on yourself. And myself is not a reliable source for confidence. I can wake up in the morning, feel confident, or think this, or somebody says that, and now I'm just thrown off. But when my confidence is rooted in God and I have a God confidence, well, God is the most dependent, most reliable source that you could ever depend on. And so I keep myself rooted and grounded in his word, in what he says about me.
Yes.
And I choose to be confident in that. I don't have to show myself off to people. I don't have to, do this and that. I try to stay very covered, very modest. I'm confident about doing that because I belong to the Lord. I don't belong to all y'all. Y'all don't need to see me. Y'all don't need to have all of that. That belongs to me. It belongs to the Lord. And guess what? It's going to belong to the man that God calls to marry me one day. And that's it. And so that's what I say to the young girl, or even to the young man that's concerned about those things and facing that. Find your confidence in the Lord. And when you find it in his word and what he says, you'll be set. And all these other voices, they won't compare to his voice.
I agree with you 100%. Our confidence comes from God. And I think if young ladies know that more, it's okay. And it's okay to start over too. Like, it's okay. We laugh about this all the time. My best friend, I won't call her age, but she's a virgin and I've been celibate for 10 years. So we're like, girl, it's hard out here. Put my top coat on. But it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And I just try to portray that to young ladies, even older. It's okay. It's okay. So I absolutely love what you said. My husband is going to get to see all this. My husband.
That's right. There's only 3 people, me, the Lord, and him. That's it.
Come on, somebody. Oh man, I've enjoyed this interview. So tell everybody, because the book is going to be released on November 16th.
Yes.
Tell everybody where to go get the book, Dwell, how they get it, how they support you, all of the above.
Absolutely. So when it releases, we're kicking it off as an Amazon exclusive. And so you'll be able to find it on Amazon. You can get it there. But then all of my other books and merch, and eventually Dwell will also be on my online store called thedwellshop.com. That's where you can find all of my merch. And like I said, I've written other books about identity and purpose and just different things. You can find it all there. And then I'd love for you to connect with me on social media. I'm most active on Instagram. You can find me on official Maddie Ray. If you came across this incredible time we had with DJ Miss Eclectic, then make sure you send me a message and let me know and say, hey, that you came from that. I would love send you a message back and thank you just for tuning in. And then also, if you're interested in listening to my music, you can find it wherever you listen to music, iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, all. And then I'm also on YouTube at official Maddie Ray.
Well, thank you, Maddie Ray, for stopping by the mixtape. Oh, I have enjoyed it. I love your boldness. I love it. You have an authority in your voice, and I love it. So, you're definitely an empowering a generation and more. So, I just encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing. And we're excited to air this interview, and we're excited to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. It's been such an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a blessed evening.
You as well. Thank you. Well, thank you. This has been so fun. You have been amazing. I would say probably one of my favorites so far. You're just so fun and I love your energy. So thank you.
Thank
DJ,
you. You made it easy because I love your energy. When energy matches energy, it's amazing. So, hey, I love it. When God is in the room, you can't beat it. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Wiki, the Mixtape Podcast with your girl, DJ Miss Eclectic.